Hello, boys and girls. Thank you for joining us. I want to share a very special story with you that happened to me and Danna when I was just a kid. And when I grew up, I grew up down in Alabama here in the United States. And I grew up on a farm, and my mother and dad always had horses for us. And I loved horses. I loved horses. And my job as a growing up as a child was to help take care of those horses and also to break and train them. And I wanted my horses not to be afraid of anything. I wanted them to be willing to go into the water, to go into a horse trailer, to not be afraid of a bag that might fly up on the side of the road if I was riding them. I wanted them to trust me that any place I wanted them to go was safe for them to go. There's a real lesson in that. We need to feel safe to follow the Lord. But there was one part of training my horses that my mother and I didn't quite see eye to eye about. As I said, I wanted my horses to be willing to go into the water. And I think my mom was okay with me taking my older horse that was well trained and everything into the water because he was okay with it. I would go out in the water with him sometimes and he would swim with me in the saddle and I would just hold on and he would take us around in the water and it was so much fun. But my mother, she didn't want me to do that with the younger horses because what I wanted to do was ride my older horse. His name was PJ. So I wanted to ride PJ into the water while I was leading the younger horse behind me because I thought, well, you know, they trust PJ and they'll probably go in the water right behind him and not be afraid. That was what I thought. So, because my parents had a pond on their property and I could never do what I wanted to do in that pond, and so I got an idea. And my idea was our neighbors have a pond. So I could go through a little patch of woods into another field, and there was the neighbor's pond where Mama couldn't see me. And so one day I got on my older horse PJ and I was leading my younger horse behind me through the woods and she came. She was about 2 years old. She followed me with no problem. And then we got to the neighbor's pond there and I rode PJ down into the water and had the younger horse behind me and she did so good. She came all the way into the water up to her knees. And we were just moving forward so well that I turned forward and thought everything was okay. And all of a sudden, she stopped and she started pulling backwards. And because I didn't let go of her rope, I didn't want to lose control of her. She pulled me right out of the saddle into the water. And down under the water I went. And I did not know at the time that way up on the hill from the pond, in the house, sitting just up on the hill, quite a distance from the pond, but close enough that you could see what was happening down at the pond. I did not know that the brother of the man who owned that pond was watching. He was standing in his backyard and he saw everything. I didn't realize that. But he saw what happened, and he told me later he jumped over the fence and he ran down there. So when I got up out of the water and I got both horses and everything, I looked up, and here's Mr. Lenny looking at me. Are you okay? Are you okay? He was afraid I was going to get up under the horse's hooves and get trampled in the water or drown or something. Well, I was okay, and I just told him, yeah, I'm fine, everything is okay. And I collected my horses and I started home. And as I approached our farm, I thought, I wonder if he's already called Mom. And I kind of sheepishly got everything fixed and put my horses away and put my saddle away and my bridle away and put everything away. And I was all wet, so I tried to hide that. I tried to go into the house quietly and change clothes while nobody would know. But every day I waited to see if Mr. Lenny was going to call. And then he would come and visit, and I waited to see if he was going to tell my mom. And I waited, and I waited, and I waited. And about 25 years later, I went home one day to visit my mother. I had grown up and gone away from home, but I came back to visit my mom. And you know what she said to me? She said, we need to go and visit Mr. Lenny because he's getting old and he may not be here much longer. So I thought nothing of it. I said, okay, let's go. So we got in the car and we drove around by the roadway to go up to Mr. Lenny's house. We went in, we sat down, and we're just talking and visiting with him and having a nice visit. And all of a sudden, he slapped his leg and he said, I remember that day when you were riding your horses in the water. I thought, oh no, he told on me. 25 years later, he told my mother. My mom looked at me. Danna Renee, I told you not to do that. So 25 years later, I had to confess to my mother and say, I'm sorry, Mom. I was disobedient. I had totally forgotten about it. But the Lord didn't forget, and He made sure that my heart was clean, and I had a chance to confess that to my mother. Be sure your sins will find you out. Don't try to hide things from your parents, and don't try to hide things from God, because sooner or later it will come back. Be sure your sins will find you out. Thank you for joining me for this story, and I hope that it was a blessing to you.